All right, so once again, we are here with Study Abroad Pre-Departure session number 1. Thank you all for joining me. The next thing though that we're gonna do is we're gonna have a surprise math test. So if you guys could all take out a piece of paper, or you can do this on your phone. This is going to be the opposite though of the way math tests usually work. We're gonna have you write down only your answers. You cannot write down your work. Okay. So on the next slide, we're having a surprise math test. Just what you're looking for, right? So on the next slide, we're going to have the 7 questions. There's going to be a key that will tell you how to do these 7 questions. So look at the key. It will help you to think about what you're supposed to do. And you will have 1 minute. And just so you know, if you don't pass the surprise math test, you cannot go abroad. No, nothing happens if you don't pass the surprise math test. This is just for fun. And I'll talk about why we're doing this in a minute. But all right, so you have 1 minute starting now. Have about 30 seconds left. "15 seconds, and then the pain will be over. 3, 2, 1. Okay, time is up. Okay, so here are the answers. Does anyone have any guesses as to why I made you do this? How does this whole thing relate to study abroad? Am I just crazy? I like inflicting pain on other people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Being aware of kind of your preconceived ideas about what things are, what they mean, that sort of thing. Okay, so it's really just a very tiny little way to start thinking about the fact that you guys are going abroad, and you're going to encounter a whole other culture. And there's going to be some things that are going to be really similar, you know, but they're still going to use cups to drink water with, and they're still going to say hello in some fashion in the morning. But there's all sorts of meanings that come with the way people do things, the way that they think about things, that might be very slightly different from the way that we think about things, or they may be completely different. So it's important, especially when you first get there, but throughout your time abroad, to continue to think about, you know, what are the differences? What's, you know, what are these assumptions that I'm bringing to this? What are the people that I'm talking to thinking about this? How is this different? And you're probably going to have things that, you know, when you first get there, they're really confusing, and then you'll start to understand, you know, oh, okay, I see what they're doing with this. But then over time, as you start to learn more about the place that you're in, you're going to get a deeper understanding of that, and you might start to rethink some of the first kind of understandings that you have over time. You know, because when you start to understand more of the history or more of the cultural background, you're just going to get more context for that. So, you know, it's a good thing to keep processing that, keep thinking about that, keep rolling around with those different types of ideas and coming to that deeper understanding. While you're abroad, you end up experiencing a lot of different things. Obviously different culture, you might run into different languages, or even if you're going someplace where they speak English, they usually will have a lot of really different slang, different accents and things like that, which can be kind of startling, but you'll adapt to it. New food, you know, they might eat more carbs or more meat or less meat or more vegetables. Usually abroad, pretty much everywhere else seems to eat a little more healthy than we do, which is kind of fun. But lots of new things to discover, new things to try. And I really encourage you, even if you think you won't like something, to just try it and see. There's a lot to, that may not look appetizing or look like something that you recognize, but when you actually try it, you're like, oh, wow, this is actually pretty tasty. You're going to run into new daily routines, even just little things like ending up showering or bathing at night instead of in the morning can kind of just change up your day quite a bit. So, be ready for that. Be ready to have different kind of rhythms to your day, depending. One example, like going to Spain, for example, they'll have siestas, and oftentimes they'll actually end up staying up super late at night, and that's just kind of a norm in that particular country. You're going to run into people who dress or look different. Some of those will be locals in the particular place that you are, but you might see other people that are also traveling internationally, because most of the places you guys are going are pretty multi-ethnic. You're going to run into new ways of interacting, which might mean language stuff, but it also might mean things having to do with like personal space. We tend in our particular part of the US to stand relatively far away from each other. In other parts of the world, you might find that people are a little bit closer than you're used to, or they might be farther away. They might be more touchy, less touchy, more inclined towards eye contact, less inclined towards eye contact, or just have different types of ways that they carry themselves. So watch for that kind of stuff and just know that it's a matter of adapting. Depending on where you end up going, some of you might run into things like bargaining. So rather than going into a store where there's a nice set price, you go in and to some sort of shop or stall or something like that, and then you're actually kind of working with the person to come to an agreement about what the cost of something might be. I personally have not had a ton of experience with bargaining. I did it a little bit when I was in Thailand, and yeah, I mostly did it because the guidebook said that they would find it insulting if I didn't do it. So I wanted to, be a part of that cultural stuff and be polite. But most of my bargaining consisted of the person would give me a price, and then I would go, oh, and then they would go, oh, but special deal just for you, and then give me a slightly lower price, and then I would be like, oh, and then I would buy the thing. But other people really get into bargaining and do a much better job than I ever did. So, if that's your sport and excitement, you should go for it. And then means of transportation. Personally, I happen to really love trains. Trains are amazing, and I love that, they tend to be relatively on time. You usually know exactly where they're going, especially metro systems. If you happen to go on the wrong train, you can just get off the train and get on the train going the other direction, and you'll get right back to where you are. Buses are nice too, but those sometimes will take you some mysterious place, a little harder to see where they're going. Airplanes, obviously, people don't use airplanes to get around as much here, but depending on where you are, you might be using that for kind of short-term hops and stuff like that. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in the second pre-departure session as well. So in conclusion, your frame of reference is going to be different. So you're going to have a whole bunch of assumptions that you're bringing with you based on your entire lifetime of experience. And just be aware that you have those assumptions, So when you encounter something that you are a little confused by, or you're not really sure what's going on, that's just part of the learning process. That's the excitement of studying abroad, is you're seeing new things and meeting new people and interacting in ways that you would not have thought that you would have done. Be open to it, be excited about it, enjoy it. And then, compare it. Think about, how are things different? How am I learning? How am I growing? What does this mean for me going forward? So yeah, I'm excited for you guys to have this opportunity. Okay, so the rest of the stuff today is going to be a little bit more matter-of-fact stuff, but this was kind of fun stuff to talk about to start with. Okay, so first thing I need to talk about is travel documents. Who has their passport? Everyone? Okay, you're still getting your passport? Okay. Since I'm recording this, even if people had their passports, I'm going to talk about it anyway. In general, the passport processing time is about 4 to 6 weeks. So for going abroad in the spring, this is probably a good time to start working on that, just to make sure that you get it back. The cost for a passport currently is $135, which includes a fee that goes to the State Department and a fee that goes to the passport processing center, which for most people is just the local post office that actually accepts it. If you do end up waiting and need to get your passport faster, there is an expedited option for that, but you have to pay an extra $60. So I usually encourage people to just order their passport early so they can avoid paying that $60. And then the passport requires a certified copy of the birth certificate, which you get from the particular county in which you were born, a passport photo, proof of identity, so usually that's a driver's license for most people, and then a photocopy of that driver's license. And then there's an application that is available online at passports.state.gov, where you can go on and you can fill it out online. The signature you're supposed to hold off on actually signing until you get to the passport acceptance facility so that they can see you sign it. And then the other thing to know is that the birth certificate, they do send it back to you. So, you're not giving it away to the State Department, but it does usually come back in a separate envelope from the passports. So you usually get 2 envelopes in the mail, one that has the brand new passport and one that has that birth certificate on there. And then if anyone does need to renew a passport, it's a similar process, except that the expired passport kind of fills in for that certified birth certificate, because the birth certificate is the proof of citizenship. And they do also send back the old passports again in a separate envelope when that happens. Okay, visas. So in this context, visa is different from the way that you usually use visa in kind of common language. It's not a credit card. It's a actual like stamp that is a physical proof of permission that you have gotten to enter a particular country. It's something that most of the time people obtain before they leave the US. So it's kind of pre-approval to enter the country. So that country's government has done some sort of screening on you. You guys run into this more than students going on short-term programs, just because it's usually kind of a 90-day timeline when they start to need to do that extra screening. So going for a semester, it's usually 3 to 4 months, which is just over that. Some places they do residence permits instead. Germany is one of them. With those, you may have things that you can do on site instead of having to do it beforehand. Some places though, like Sweden, you still have to get permission before you enter the country, even though it's technically a residence permit that they issue once you get there. So it is very specific to each individual country that you're going to. So the question, do you need a visa? The places to look, and I'll run through just a few of kind of the top hits before I finish here, but the places to look to double check this, the website of the embassy or the consulate of your host country. So the embassy is the main like diplomatic building that is in a particular country. So usually embassies in the US are located in Washington, DC, because that's where our capital is. And then they have these smaller locations that are called consulates that are regional. So then they are located all over the US to service people that are in states that are farther away from Washington, DC. So most of the time, if you're a Minnesota or North Dakota resident, our closest consulate is in Chicago, because that's kind of the biggest Midwestern city. So a way to Google that, like Consulate of Spain, Chicago, is commonly what will bring it up. If you are from a different state, you may be looking at a different consulate or looking at the embassy. So double check which consulate applies for your particular residence. Your host school often will send you information on what the next steps are. Usually the host school has to do something to sponsor you. So they either send notification to the Immigration Bureau for their particular country, or they have to provide some sort of letter of acceptance or something like that, just to indicate that they're basically taking responsibility for your behavior while you're in the country, and that kind of speeds up the process for people. Ask your study abroad advisor, that would be me. So I send out information to people about the visa processes as best I know. If you have any questions or anything like that, do ask. If I haven't contacted you with information, please do contact me. I will probably, maybe this week or the next week, we'll be sending out emails about the visa process to people that are going to kind of those really common countries for visa needs. But don't hesitate to just email me and ask, because it's better safe than sorry on that front. And then the U.S. Department of State does have a website that has some information, but I'll be honest, their stuff tends to focus a little bit more on kind of tourist stuff as opposed to student visa permission. So it might be a little light on details for what you'd be looking for. Oftentimes, if you do need to apply for a visa, you will need some sort of application form. You usually need to pay some sort of application fee for the processing. They may need 1 or 2 or more passport photos. If you need those, the NDSU card office in this building actually does those. 2 photos is $10, and they'll give them to you in like less than 5 minutes. You can get them slightly cheaper going someplace like Walmart or Walgreens, CVS, those sorts of places. Usually I think it's around $7 or $8 at those locations, but they usually take about an hour to process it for some reason. I don't know why our people can do it faster, but that's really common to have that waiting time. NDSU card in this building, and then Walgreens, Walmart, those types of places. And then they often need your actual physical passport. And the reason for that is that most countries, I'll say Australia especially accepted, most countries, they have an actual physical either rubber stamp or a sticker that they put in there that goes with that. Australia has really kind of gotten ahead of the pack, I guess, in that they do basically digital versions of them. So they have your passport number and they just have it matched up when you get there, which is kind of cool. Other things that they may need for a visa application include a letter of acceptance from the host university, like I said. Sometimes they need proof of income. So they need to know that you're not going to get to the country and then immediately become homeless and need to use all of their public services. So usually proof of income would be some combination of proof from the financial aid office of any incoming grants, scholarships, loans that you're going to be receiving, which they provide this for people all the time. It's just basically a letter with that information on it. They may accept information about funds that you already have. So if you have savings that you're planning on putting towards the cost of the program. And they may also accept documentation about funds that your parents have. So some countries are perfectly fine if your parents want to say, basically, I take full financial responsibility for my child. But again, it does depend on the country, and I can help with that. There are a few countries that'll ask for a doctor's report, but that's not super common. If they need it, it's just to prove that you are in good physical health. Egypt is one of the countries that does require a chest x-ray to make sure that you don't have tuberculosis. And also, I think they still do an AIDS test, but they're really on kind of the far end of that. Most places that you would go to as a US citizen, they just assume that you're going to be in good health because we don't have a lot of communicable diseases that we'd be bringing. But if you see it, just follow the instructions for what it is that they would need. And then pretty much all of them are going to need some sort of proof of insurance to make sure that if you get sick, there's insurance to cover that. And I'll talk about insurance stuff in just a minute here. And then there are some countries that do require that you go and apply for your visa in person. And some of those are the really common ones like Spain, Italy, Denmark, and those do require going all the way to Chicago. It's not a big deal to do those. It's kind of like going to the DMV where you have a little 5-minute drop in and hand them your paperwork and they ask you where you're going and you tell them I'm going to study at this school, and then they take your stuff and you go, wait, why did I have to drive all the way to Chicago to apply for this visa? But it's just a requirement because they're trying to combat terrorism and stuff like that. So if you do need to go to apply for your visa in person, that'll be something that you'll probably be planning on doing as soon as your letter of acceptance would come from your particular host university. But I'll, again, go through, try to contact people. But if you have any questions at any time, please contact me about the visa stuff. And then again, you do usually have to submit your passport. It can take 1 to 3 months to get the visa, so it isn't something to do the week before you're supposed to leave. They'll usually give you a timeline of how long it takes for them to do the visa stuff. I will say that most of the time they won't promise, even if you were to get it in as early as possible, that they will get it back to you in time. So it is a little bit of a frustrating process in those terms. Most of the time you can't apply more than 90 days in advance because the visa that they would issue you, it would be only for 90 days. So if you applied earlier, it would expire before you would go to enter the country. So it is a little bit of kind of working within their time frame to do that stuff. But if there is a time frame for that, usually it is good to apply as early as you can within that window, just especially so you don't end up being stressed waiting for your passport to come back and seeing the date that you're supposed to depart getting closer and closer. And then I know it's in all caps and very angry looking, but it is really important to emphasize that you do, if you need a visa, have to get a visa. What happens if you don't have a visa is you actually get to the airport here, and the people that check you in actually check your passport to make sure that you have the right visa documentation to be able to enter the country. And if you don't, they will send you home. They'll say you can't board the plane because you can't enter the country right now. And the reason for that is the countries actually fine the airlines if they bring people there who can't enter. So that's in their financial best interest to not send people along that way. And that would be super sad. So just make sure that you do anything that you need to do to apply for your visa. And then the last thing to emphasize is that you always want to mail your passport if you are mailing it with a tracking number on it. You can do that through the U.S. Postal Service. It's not super expensive. I'll say the U.S. Postal Service tracking numbers are not the most helpful. If it gets lost, it's very helpful as far as finding where your passport went. You guys may have noticed from Amazon, though, if you have a USPS tracking number, it basically goes from I have no idea this package exists to it's been delivered. There's no intermediary in there of where it might be. So if you did want to be following your package and double checking, US Postal Service isn't so great for that, but it's still good again if it gets lost. FedEx, UPS, those sorts of services, though, if you want to be tracking it more closely, you can do those with the tracking number as well. So any questions? For Australia, yes. Yep, for Australia. All online, actually, for Australia, which is pretty handy. It's expensive. It's like $500, but it's all online. So you just upload stuff and then you wait a couple of days and then they send you a notice and say it's approved, which is pretty cool. Okay, so jumping into health insurance. I know everyone is just so excited to talk about health insurance, but it's important. Okay, so I'm gonna tell my horror story that I always tell because it was super sad. And so when I stayed abroad, I didn't think about health insurance, right? Like I was a college student and I was healthy and it just wasn't a big deal. My parents thought about it a little bit. I was on my parents' health insurance and they said, oh, it works abroad. We checked and it should be perfectly fine. So I was like, oh, great. I don't have to think about this annoying thing. This is just not a thing that I care about. And so I went to Japan, made some friends. And one of my friends, her name was Meredith, was in a similar situation where she was on her parents' health insurance and, never really thought about it. Until maybe about a month in, she fell off her bicycle. And it wasn't even like a big crash or anything like that. She was just biking. She was going really slowly. She hit the curb. She fell over sideways and she broke her arm. But for some reason, something with the way that she fell off her bicycle hit it just right. She didn't just break it like once. She like shattered her arm. Like it was a big mess. And so they had to do surgery on her arm to put all the pieces back together. And then the way that the Japanese medical system is set up is a little different from here. Here, because we're trying to minimize costs, If you are, have a broken arm, you have surgery, they try to send you home as quickly as possible. But in the Japanese system, they don't think that that is an adequate standard of care. They want you to stay in the hospital so that they can take care of you and double check and make sure that everything is okay. So she was actually in the hospital for 2 weeks before she convinced them that she needed to be able to leave and not be sitting in the hospital. And they still wanted to keep her, but she just was so ornery that they finally let her go. And so she went back another week or 2 later so that they could double check that her arm was healing and everything was okay. And unfortunately, it was not. Something had happened, and so her arm had shifted and the bones weren't healing correctly. So she ended up coming back to the US in order to have them re-break her arm and then redo the surgery, which was all unpleasant in and of itself. But the thing that was a really big bummer was that when her health insurance got the bill for all of this stuff in Japan, they said, well, we only cover emergencies. And you went to the emergency room, which we can cover that, but then they checked you in so that they could do this surgery, and it's no longer an emergency. Doesn't matter if your arm is broken, technically not an emergency anymore. So she had this enormous medical bill in Japan that she had no way to pay for. And so she ended up just not ever being able to come back. And luckily the school was nice and just shipped all her stuff back to her. But that was just kind of the sad end to her semester abroad. So I guess kind of the takeaway is our medical system in the US, as you guys are probably aware of, is a little bit of a mess. And health insurance companies really look for ways to not pay for medical things abroad, which is why it's incredibly important for you to have insurance that is specifically for traveling. Even though your health insurance here in the US might claim that it would work for abroad, it really probably won't, and if you ever actually needed it. Most of the affiliate programs have this type of insurance that's already built into the program cost. ISEP also has health insurance that's required that meets our kind of rigorous standards. And for anyone that's going on a partner exchange program or a direct program or a non-affiliated program, we require that students get insurance through CISI, which is our preferred provider. We have a specific plan with them. What all of these different insurances are going to cover for you is they would have international coverage, and most of them, especially the CISI one, has no deductibles. So if you needed to go to a hospital for treatment, it would cover at 100%, starting right away. And a lot of times, all over the world, they actually can do direct pay, meaning you don't have to pay anything out of pocket and get reimbursed. They can actually just pay the hospital or pay the doctor directly, which is pretty cool. And they do have resources to help you find doctors and hospitals. If you have something that's not an emergency, but you need to go to the doctor or the hospital and you want to make sure that they can do the direct pay, they will help you find those particular locations too. They also include emergency medical evacuation. So as an example of something small with that, when I worked at Concordia, there was a professor who went on a volunteer program with some students to Haiti. And she had some really minor medical thing that happened. But it turns out that none of the hospitals that were on the island had gloves that weren't latex gloves, and she had a latex allergy. So health insurance actually evacuated her back to the US so she could be treated here, someplace where they could use an alternative to latex gloves. So even little things they will cover with that medical evacuation. But of course, if you had something major that you needed more treatment back here, they would cover you for that as well. Another thing is that if you're going to be sick in the hospital, and actually it's 5 days, not 7, they will fly a family member to be with you, so you don't have to be in the hospital by yourself, which is pretty cool. We had a girl who fell and broke her ankle. She was studying in the UK. She had gone to Greece over spring break, broke her ankle. They actually flew her mom out the second day to go be with her because she was in a country where she didn't speak the language. They wanted to have her have support. And then after she got out of the hospital, the health insurance actually paid to fly her mom to the UK with her as well, so her mom could help her get set up back with her housing and everything like that, so that she could finish out her semester smoothly. It also includes worldwide emergency assistance. So there's a phone number you can call anytime, and they'll provide help with any sort of emergency that's going on. And then if there's any sorts of natural disasters, terrorist attacks, political upheaval, those sorts of things, they are there to get you out of those situations. So for example, a few years ago in Egypt, there was all of the protests and the changeover in the government and stuff like that. And CISI was actually able to get the people, the students that were there, out faster than the US Embassy was, because they were just on it. That's their job, is to make sure that people are taken care of. If you do need the CISI insurance because you are on a partner exchange program or a direct program, it's $38.25 a month, which is really affordable for insurance. And again, ISIP and most of the affiliate programs have insurance already built in that's very, very similar to the CISI standard. And so then the NDSU insurance requirement is waived. If you do need the CISI insurance, it's going to be in your study abroad application. Now that you're accepted, it'll have that information. The deadline for that will be December 1st, but you may need to do it a little bit earlier if you need proof of insurance for visa purposes, and we can order that earlier if that's the case. It's really quick for us to order it. When you order it, you literally just say, this is the start date and this is the number of months I want. So if you are planning on traveling or anything like that after the program, it works really well because you can just say, you know, I wanted to start January 15th, I want 4 months, and then it'll just keep going. And if you want to add any at any point, we can do that too pretty easily. Yeah, and then if you have any questions, feel free to contact us or contact your program, and they can clarify. Any questions about that? I know it's a super pick-me-up, right? But it's nice to just not have to think about it once it's taken care of. Okay, academic stuff. So the first thing to know is that here at NDSU, we will have you register for the term that you're gone. We're going to register you for something called University 492, which is just a general placeholder. It says you are a full-time student who happens to be studying abroad at the moment. For most people, we have you register for 12 credits. There's a very specific reason for that. It gives you the most flexibility to choose the amount of credits that you want to take abroad, but it's the number that you need in order to be full-time. So to be eligible for financial aid and loans and most of the scholarships and things like that. There is the North Dakota State Scholarship. They've actually made it much more complicated in terms of determining exactly how many credits you need to take. So talk to Michelle Marks over in the financial aid office, or talk to us and we can talk to her if you need help in figuring out how many credits you need to take, because it does depend on how many credits you already have and if you're on track, and there's a whole calculation that goes into it now. But if you need more than 12 credits in order to be eligible for that specific scholarship, we can register you for that. But almost everyone will register for 12 credits. You can still take more than 12 credits abroad. It doesn't limit you to only taking those, but it means that you really only have to take 12 credits. You have flexibility when you get abroad to drop a class or something like that. And so the University 492, I do have to issue permits. So I'll issue those later this month and send everyone an email, and it'll have the step-by-step of how to go ahead and register. And you'll be able to do that during your normal registration window. So watch for that. While you're abroad, you do, in order to satisfy the satisfactory academic progress requirement, need to take at least as many credits as you're registered for here. So that's that 12 credit as kind of the baseline of what you need to take. But while you're abroad, you have a lot of flexibility to take more credits than that. You know, so if you really desperately want to take 18 credits abroad or something like that, you can do that. I recommend for most people to stick closer to the 12 credit mark, just because being abroad, you have a lot of opportunities, a lot of interesting things, a lot of adjustments that you're going through. And, you know, just be nice to yourself, give yourself that breathing room to be able to do those things if you're at all able to. And I will say some programs do specify more specifically than kind of our general guidelines. Some programs will say you have to take, this number of classes that works out to 15 credits, or some programs will say you can't take more than these 18 credits. So if you do have any questions, check with your program or ask me and I can look into it for you. But NDSU, anywhere in the 12 to 20 credits. We can accept. And actually, technically, we'll take more than that if you wanted to bring it back. But please don't take more than 20 credits. You'll do yourself a stressful disservice by doing it that way. So one thing that you're going to run into is the academic system abroad is probably going to be different from what you're used to here. First of all, their registration, you will need to register following whatever their system is. For most schools, not all, but most schools, the registration is finalized when you're actually on site during orientation. The reason that they do it that way is because they want to make sure that these international students aren't holding a whole bunch of spots that their students want and then maybe never showing up. They want you to actually be there, so I know you're going to be in the classes and stuff like that. It's nice though because you do, have some flexibility once you get there to kind of shift things around usually. So if you go to a first class and realize you don't like that professor or something like that, you can usually switch that around. The educational systems themselves are probably going to be a little bit different. One really common system that people will see is the European Credit Transfer System, ECTS. The main takeaway of that is that you'll often see ECTS as an acronym for the number of credits. So I'll say like this class is 10 ECTS. And it's a 2-to-1 basis. So if a class abroad is 10 ECTS, it should come back to NDSU as 5 NDSU credits. It's just a different numbering system for the way that they do that. Other places, Australia, it's usually 4 NDSU credits, whatever the class is. If it isn't clear, there is a way to do the calculation at NDSU. The strictly speaking definition of credits is 12.5 hours of class is equal to 1 credit. So if you take the number of hours of class that you're in class each week times the number of weeks that you're in class and get the total number of hours for that semester of that class and divide it by 12.5, that'll tell you how many credits it should come back to at NDSU. And we have more information on our website. There's a little bit more examples and things like that. Okay, and then another thing that you may have seen already in your application just as a suggested thing that you might want to use is the request to waive or substitute courses form. This is the same form that's used on campus all the time for substituting one course for another. If you have any courses that you don't care how they come back, you just need the credits, even if that's all your credits, you don't have to do this form. You can just go abroad, and then when we get the transcript afterwards, registration and records will transfer in all of the credits that are on the transcript showing that you passed it into NDSU as just that number of credits. And that'll count towards the total number you need to graduate. But if you have any courses that you want to replace requirements for your major or your minor, this is the form that you would use. It's available in the online application. It's on our academics page. It's also on the Bison Connection website. And you can do it now if you want. So if you want to go talk to your advisor and get their signature and talk to the chair and do that now. In that case, then you might want to get a few extra courses approved. Give yourself some options, things to pick from if you decide to switch it out. Yes?
I think I've already heard this like a long time ago. So, but I'm going to Europe, so I'll be using ECTS.
Yeah.
And I'm doing 3 classes, 3 10s, so that's 30.
Yes.
And so that'd be 15 credits here at NDSU.
It would, yep.
It would only count, so like that'd be like 12 credits. Or that'd be 9 credits, like 3 classes worth. So there'd be like 6 credits that are like left over. Like those can be applied to like 2 different classes, right?
Well, so the way it'll work is you'll end up with basically 3 5-credit classes. And so if your department wants to say we're going to swap out these classes for these multiple requirements, they can do that too. But it's not on a credit by credit basis, it's on a class by class basis generally.
Oh, okay. So I mean, like, if they wanted to do 3 credits, or so they wanted to count those. They they want to count those 3 credit classes for 3, like the classes I took in Europe for 3 credit classes. So then there would be like a surplus of 6 credits.
Nope.
They
those.
apply those to like different classes if they want.
So those classes are just going to be 5 credit classes when they come back. So your department, if they want to say, you know, these couple of 5 credit classes, we're going to swap those out to fulfill 3 classes worth of requirements because it's so many credits, they can do that, but it's not a surplus of credits. There's still 3 5 credit classes. Does that make sense? Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's really confusing and it's a little weird the way this stuff works, but yeah, so you can do it before, you can do it during. So if you get abroad, you decide to take a different class than you thought, you can actually just email your department and they can go ahead and sign off on changing things around. And you can do it after you get back. There's a deadline on there. The real purpose of the deadline is just to give you kind of a time frame in your mind, but generally speaking, the only reason why we have a deadline is because before and during and after you get back, before we've gotten the transcript, if you turn this form in directly to Registration and Records or turn it into One Stop and they send it to Registration and Records, the people who process it over there get really confused because they don't see those classes that are substituting for anywhere on your transcript at that point. They only see the study abroad credits, or at this point, they don't even see the study abroad credits yet. And so they go, I don't really know what they're talking about, and put it into a queue somewhere and hopefully pick it up later. What we would prefer and what kind of speeds up the process for you guys is during those timeframes, give it to our office, because then what we'll do is we'll put any of these forms that we have together with the transcript when it comes in and send it to Registration and Records all at once, so that they can just do one round of processing that stuff and get it all in your transcript, kind of lickety-split with that. But after we've turned your transcript into Registration and Records, you can still do this form. You're not stopped from doing it. You can do it and just turn it directly into Registration and Records at that point, because they will have a copy of the transcript to verify that you actually completed that course and to process it as normal. So you just, in that case, need to get it to Registration and Records before you graduate. That makes sense? Yeah, and then on this particular form, because they are doing the substitution for the requirements for your particular major or your minor, they can approve substitutions from any type of class as long as it's for those particular requirements. Like I said, it might be helpful to get more courses approved than you think you'll take, because that gives you some flexibility. Any courses, again, that you don't care what they're used for, you don't have to do any sort of approval. And then don't forget that it does require the signature of your advisor and the signature of the chair of your department. Or if you're a lucky duck who both of those are the same person, they'll just sign in both spots. And then, of course, again, follow the local procedures to actually register for your courses abroad and take them and pass them. And then for general education credit, if anyone has not yet done their cultural diversity or their global perspectives, the exciting news is that the experience of studying abroad for a full semester will fulfill those. You don't even have to take a specific course for that. Just studying abroad fulfills that. You do still have to fill out this appeal general education requirements form, but it's just a matter of putting some information at the top, and then there's literally a checkbox for study abroad students. That is something that you do after you get back, though, because they need to see that you have successfully passed University 492 in order to approve it for you. For any other types of requirements, for any other gen eds, you can also take those abroad. It's the same form. It just requires that you give them a little bit of documentation and an explanation. You know, here's a copy of the syllabus and the paper that I wrote, and this is why I learned what the description of this gen ed category is. We have some more information on our website about how that process works, and I'm happy to help with that as well. Okay, and then when you're getting halfway through your time abroad, you will have your registration time come back up here at NDSU for the following semester. It'll just be the same normal process as always. So in Campus Connection, you'll go in during your registration window, do your registration process. You may want a week before or something like that to go in and just double check that your Campus Connection password is still working and you aren't having any issues with logging into the system, especially if you have any courses that are really important to get into for the semester that you get back. The reason being is that you'll have to work with the NDUS help desk to resolve any issues with your password, and there's time difference, and that can take a little bit longer than when you're on campus to solve those. I can't unfortunately register anyone for any classes or anything, so you do have to do it through Campus Connection. And then monitor your registration time. So just remember that there may be differences in time differences, that if you really desperately need to register right away when your window opens up, you may be registering at 3 a.m. or something like that. So account for that if that matters. Most people it doesn't, they just wake up and do it the next time. But oh, and one other little piece of advice that I have gotten as feedback from students, the semester after you come back, it may be a little bit harder to readjust than you expect. So I have had students suggest if you have any flexibility as far as how many credits you're going to take this semester afterwards, that may not be the semester that you want to take 20 credits back here on campus. You may want to put that off for a different semester if you're able to. But of course, if you have to take what you have to take, that's how it goes. But be kind to yourself. And then before you return, you'll want to make sure that everything is in place as far as getting your transcript back. Most of the programs, it's a pretty well-oiled machine for having the transcript sent back to us. The people on the other side already know where they go. But if they ever do need information about where the transcript needs to be sent, it goes to our office because we do put it together with those substitution forms. And we do send that all over to registration records with a cover memo and stuff like that, that speeds up the processing for you guys. Obviously, if you write this down now, you're not gonna have this piece of paper in 6 months. So just remember that on our Study Abroad website, there is a whole section called Returning to NDSU, and these addresses are right on that page. It also has some things like, get people's email addresses and those types of reminders, but it has the addresses up there. And because I guess our system is just super confusing, there's 2 different addresses for our office depending on the type of mail used. Most of the time, transcripts tend to be express mail, so FedEx, UPS, something like that. But if you did need it for regular mail, that address is out there as well. And then the timeline after we get the transcripts is it usually takes about 1 to 2 months for the university to process everything and to send the transcript to us and for it to go through all the international mail process and to get to our office. We process it under 1 week. We usually try to get it out same day, even if we can. And then it goes over to registration records, and they take about 1 to 2 months, depending, to process things on their side. So it may be somewhere in the 2 to 4 months before everything is going to show up on your transcript here. And I will just warn you, I'll send you an email to remind you that this is going to happen, but you may for a while see an F on your transcript under that University 492. Everything will be okay though. Everything will get processed, it'll get fixed and updated and changed to a P. It's just kind of an unfortunate side effect of the way all of the processing stuff works. If you are planning on graduating right after the program though, because of how long all of this stuff takes, it probably will affect your graduation date. We've tried to be really upfront in the application, so I think you guys should have all seen that when you were first applying. But for spring programs, it would push it back for sure until summer and possibly until fall, depending on the timing of the end of the program and stuff like that. But if you have any questions, let me know. And then a couple of important questions. Does study abroad affect my GPA? So no, as a general statement. Study abroad credits come in as transfer credits, which do not affect your GPA. However, the one thing that they can affect is honor standing. So if you are looking at honor standing for graduation, so summa cum laude, that sort of thing, that does include that. And that includes any other credits you may have transferred from Concordia or MSUM or something like that too. So in that case, then you would want to look at grades. Otherwise, it's just a simple pass-fail metric. And The big thing with the pass-fail metric is that we do need you for sure to please pass at least one class, because in that case we can give you a P for your University 492. And if you were to fail everything, unfortunately we'd have to give you an F for 12 credits, which nobody wants that. So pass at least something for sure. But otherwise it's pretty flexible. And then do I need to earn certain grades abroad? For the most part, no, but sometimes in your department, they may say you need to earn certain grade levels in order to have courses count towards requirements that you have. So double check with your department if you're planning on using courses to fulfill those types of requirements, and they can let you know if they have any of those, in which case then you'll need to meet that. Any questions? Okay. Last big section here, financial planning. So I just wanted to run through kind of briefly what to expect as far as when things are due and how things are billed and stuff like that. So the first thing, these are early costs. So these are things that you may have already paid or you may have coming up soon. So the top two are both exchange programs. So Partner NDSU Exchange and then the ISEP Exchange. Those you have already paid an admin, well actually all of them you've already paid an admin fee. And then if there's health insurance that you need to pay for, that would either be something that would be coming up soon or December 1st. And then early costs for direct programs, there's the admin fee. If there was health insurance that you needed to purchase, that would be due December 1st, or if you had to confirm something. And then affiliate provider programs, sometimes they have an application fee or a deposit that's separate that you might have to pay. So check with your affiliate provider if you're going on one of those programs, and they can let you know the time frame for that. And then for the term that you're actually gone, these are the things that we charge you through the NDSU system. So for the NDSU partner exchange programs, you pay regular NDSU tuition, regular NDSU student fees, so whatever you normally pay for a semester. And then there is the user fee. So the user fee just goes to support staff in our office. And for programs that are more than 90 days, that is $500. So you can expect to see that. And then ISEP Exchange, it's the same list, except they also have something called the ISEP program fee, which is the room and board, and then the placement acceptance fee is included in that as well. And so that one's a little bit bigger, but it includes basically everything for those programs. With the direct programs, for the tuition part, the NDSU tuition is waived, so you don't have to pay for that. There is a small amount of student fees that are state mandated, so we can't waive those at the university level, but it's really small. It's $66.48 for this semester. There's also that user fee. And then those direct programs, we do pay the university and then bill the exact amount through the NDSU Campus Connection system here. So there's usually a little bit of a delay with that because we have to wait to get that bill and then do the billing. So don't be surprised when that happens. And then the affiliate provider programs, it's just the student fees and the user fee because the program costs are paid to that particular provider. And then charges that are paid separately. So with those NDSU partner exchange programs, room and board is paid locally. So you can use financial aid and loans and stuff like that to cover it, but you're paying it to the local apartment or local system there. And then, kind of standard stuff like spending money, passport, visa, flight, all of those types of things that end up being out-of-pocket costs. ISEP Exchange, similar, except you've already paid the room and board through Campus Connection, so you just have kind of those extra costs. And then the direct programs, room and board, is paid on site. Spending money, all those types of things are paid separately. Affiliate, usually the program fee is paid to that particular provider, and then room and board stuff is either included in that or paid as a separate fee. So going into a little bit of the options that are out there, the big thing that people often end up using are alternative student loans or private student loans. Those usually do have a separate online application. You do still have to meet with an advisor over in the financial aid office so that they can verify that the amount that you're eligible for, that your financial need has changed. because you have those extra costs like an airline ticket or potentially more tuition than you would pay on campus here. And then they'll set that up so that you'll have a difference in the amount that you might be eligible for. An important thing to know is that if you haven't taken one of these out before, they do usually require a cosigner. It doesn't have to be a parent. It can be, somebody else that you know or a family member or something like that. But it has to be somebody who has good credit to kind of back up and promise that you will pay. Federal financial aid can be used for this, but you do have to have completed the FAFSA. So if you haven't done the FAFSA from last year, you can go to fafsa.gov to apply for that. And all students are eligible to receive an unsubsidized direct loan. It's just the amount varies depending on your financial background. There are scholarships that are out there. I will say, unfortunately, right now, most of the deadlines have passed, but feel free to take a look at the scholarship page on our website. And you can also use scholarships that are, not specifically for studying abroad to study abroad. All of that stuff will still apply because you're still an NDSU student. So feel free to take a look at those. And then, of course, thinking about your own savings, what you might earn between now and when you would be going abroad, any sort of family assistance that might be out there, and plan for that. You might get an income tax refund while you're gone, which you can kind of plan for. In general, anything that you can not take out in loans is going to make your life easier farther down the road. So, even though we may give you a fairly large amount that we say is a reasonable cost for this because we're overestimating on things like spending money and your airline ticket and stuff like that. I recommend if you can avoid taking out that full amount, whether because you have savings or whether, you're just going to be fiscally responsible and spend less money, do that because it'll make your life easier in the future. And then things to think about, some of those costs are going to be things that'll come up before your financial aid comes in. So do talk to the financial aid office, potentially about what you're doing already for this semester if you need assistance with that, or talk to me and I can kind of help brainstorm with some of the planning stuff with that too. But you'll have those things coming up probably well before the financial aid will come in for spring. Some of the programs, especially affiliate programs, have something called a verification of award form, meaning the affiliate provider may say, here's our program cost, this is due November 1st for the spring program, and obviously you don't have $15,000 to send to them, so they have you do this verification of award form where the financial aid office verifies that you're going to be receiving this amount of financial aid on this particular date, and then that affiliate provider moves that deadline to match when your financial aid comes in, so that you can pay them with those loans or grants or whatever it is. Loan debt, there's a loan calculator out there. It's worthwhile just to take a look at that and kind of get an idea of what the impact will be down the road. And again, the cosigner piece. And then odds and ends. Oh, shoot, I updated it on one version of this, but not on this one. Your financial aid will come in usually about the 3rd week of January. So January 20th, thereabouts. There's a calendar online that'll tell you the exact date. But if you are going to be leaving before that date, you'll definitely want to do a direct deposit form and get the direct deposit set up, because then what happens is financial aid comes into your account at NDSU, pays on anything due to NDSU, and then within a day or two, they'll put the rest of the money into your bank account. So you can actually use an ATM card or something like that abroad and get access to that money right away. If you don't do a direct deposit form, they have to send you a paper check, which takes another like 3 to 4 weeks. And then a check goes to your house, and then your parents have to deposit it, and then it takes a while for the check to clear, and it's a big pain. So if you've never gotten a refund before and don't have this set up, that is definitely an important thing to do. And I'll talk more next time about accessing the money and ATM cards and all of those types of things too. Also, if you do want your parents to be able to call and troubleshoot anything, a FERPA release form has to be on file for the financial aid office to talk to them. Be sure also to cancel if you have a housing contract out there, a meal plan, a parking pass, so you can get those taken care of. And then the last thing is double and triple check to make sure that if you are taking out a loan, that you have actually completed all of the paperwork that's necessary. I know this is kind of obvious, but it seems like every semester there's one student who thought that they had everything and there was some small detail that was in there where they missed a signature somewhere that they needed to do. And then they're abroad and they're panicking because they didn't get the financial aid that they were expecting to come in. So it's just better double check that and make sure that you don't miss any steps. Okay, so if you are planning on doing financial aid stuff, you do have to have a budget set up for that. Most of the exchange and the direct programs we already have set up. Affiliate providers, we have to do those program budgets individually. And it should all be explained in your study abroad application. And there's also a link in your study abroad application for setting up an appointment so that Christy over in Student Financial Services, she can get everything ready for you for when you go in for your meeting, which makes it much shorter. But yeah, if you have any questions, if you have any questions about the amount that you pay, where you pay it, you know, when you pay it, those types of things, ask me or ask your other advisor in our office. If you have any questions about loans, grants, scholarships, when those come in, amounts that you're eligible for and stuff like that, that is their office. Yes?
Do we have to do that? Like, only so we're just doing the exchange?
Mm-hmm. Only if you need aid stuff.
Like, so we're still taking out like a loan from, like, you know, the previous, like for this semester, like
yeah.
in January. It's just like regular financial aid.
If you,
I'm not taking out like additional, like private.
Yeah, if you want to take out an amount that is different from from what you've taken out in the past because you're potentially eligible for more, then yes, you do have to meet with them because they have to adjust your budget to make you eligible to be able to do that. If you just want to take out the same amount that you've done normally, then you don't have to meet with them. It'll just kind of continue on without any intervention with that. Okay, so last thing. We started with a test, we're gonna end with homework, but it's fun homework. It's just write a letter to yourself, bring to the next session. So this is only for you to see. We're not gonna read it. We're gonna have you seal it in an envelope for your eyes only. So put whatever you want into that letter. Think about things that you're excited for, things that you're worried about, things you wanna do, anything that you think you might find interesting when you get back, go ahead and write in that letter. And then bring it to the second pre-departure and we'll hold on to it and give it back to you after you get back. And then second pre-departure session is going to be in 2 weeks, Tuesday, 3 to, and I'm going to say 4:30. It's a little bit longer because I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff, travel arrangements, health and safety, money, cell phones, behavioral expectations, immunizations, basically everything related to all of the travel stuff for that. So I'll do my best to get you out by 4:30, but it will definitely be 3 to 4:30 next time. Okay, so any questions? Let me go ahead and end this here.